friend, philosopher and guide for the chapter, Hitendra Gupta, Vice President, CA Manoharan, President, CA K. Raghu, who has also been elected as the ICAI board member to serve the country and the profession for next 3 or 4 years to follow, and my beloved delegates. A lot was mentioned about the changes that are happening in India, right from the new government to new laws, new initiatives by the profession, so on and so forth. And changes are happening not only on the national front, professional front, but even on the domestic front. 20 years ago, if you had asked a housewife in India to decide on a small matter, she would have said, I need to consult my husband. Today, every husband in India says the same thing. I need to consult my husband. And that's why those days the saying was, behind every successful man, there is a woman. So they started asking, which woman? So they clarified, saying behind every successful man, there is a wife. Of course, you should not ask which wife, whose wife. Fortunately, India's culture has not degenerated so much, you can still say his own wife. And a surprised mother-in-law. But the way things have happened later, we had a lot of income tax. Scenario where women are paying income tax. They have become, successful entrepreneurs. As Raghu also was mentioning, women empowerment has been happening on all fronts. And we find a lot of women are more successful than the, men. So therefore, the saying underwent a change. Behind every successful person, there is a spouse. So thereby we remove the gender bias. And the tax rates also takes place. So therefore now the saying goes like this. Behind every successful person, there is a spouse and the tax department. One takes the credit, the other takes the cash. Never find anything undisclosed. And all of us know that Charles Darwin went on to say, it is not the strongest of the species that survive, not even the most intelligent ones, but the ones who survive are the ones who are responsive to the change. And therefore, adaptability is the need of the hour, even in India. Now, I would take you through the little bit, past scenario of where the Indian economy stands, based on the last 10 years of, ruling by the other party, and then we'll take you on to what is in store for us in the future. Now, moving further, one thing that affects the sentiments of investors, the mood of the investing community, looking at India, though India is emerging as one of the most safest hubs for global investment, what is disturbing is it is not so easy to do business in India because of so many factors. Look at this scenario, out of 189 countries, the rating is 134th, whereas Australia it is 11th position. And what needs to be changed is the mindset. At the, in the earlier session it was mentioned as to cost overrun, time overrun, and delays in approvals, and players in the market pulling out of executing projects, so on and so forth. That's primarily because of the so-called red tapeism. So therefore, and there was on the other side policy paralysis. Decisions were not taken in a timely manner. So that only pushed India backwards. And at the same time, I would like to recall what kind of a culture, an heritage, Indians had from the traditional legacy, because all of us know Swami Vivekananda went way back in 1893 to Chicago and addressed the convention there and mesmerized the audience, including the Americans, and got a standing ovation. And he always dresses like a monk. Mostly it was dressed like a monk. So one of the Westerners asked him, why don't you dress like a gentleman? And Swami Vivekananda's reply seems to be on these lines. Maybe in your culture, a gentleman is made by a tailor, but in ours, it is by character. And that is true. That is how the rich culture and character, like Alex was mentioning this morning in the first session, you need to build culture based on which the character gets reflected, and then you can influence and create the impact that you want. Maybe India, the new government is churning out this thought process and the new philosophy to improve the quotient of India in terms of conducive environment for doing the business. Moving further, again tracing the past. 20 years ago, look at the value of rupee vis-a-vis the respective currencies, be it US dollars or euro or pounds. Leave alone the major economies. Just go to the neighborhood of India, neighboring countries like Singapore or Malaysia, and the UAE. Every one of these currencies, you can, in the last 20 years seem to have galloped and doubled in value against Indian currency. So much of devaluation of Indian rupee. And what about India versus Australian currency? Way back in 1993, it was just 21, 22, 25. And now it is 55 and odd. So therefore, the scenario is not different between India and Australia as well. And this can be a yardstick. This can reflect on many factors that have gone wrong in India. And further going down, another parameter which can reflect on where the economy was, progressing all these along, is the population below the poverty line. If you look at China, they were in a much worse scenario compared to India. But China, it has come down from 84% to 12% by 2010, whereas India could manage to come down to only 32% or so. So why this kind of a differentiation? The reason is China is very strong and focused on manufacture, whereas India has evolved as a strong economy based on service sector. Now, if you are very strong on only service sector, what happens is the prosperity does not percolate down to the masses. It stops with the creamy layer of the society. It confines to professionals in different works, like IT professionals or other professionals. So the creamy layer of the society only get the benefit of the prosperity. Whereas in China, the labor class, the unskilled, ones, get the purchase power, earning capacity, because manufacturing is on a strong footing. So therefore, from that perspective also, that's why Prime Minister made a talk on the Independence Day on 15th of August and invited all players across the globe. You come and manufacture in India. Let it be made in India. You sell it anywhere in the globe. So, because we need to make manufacturing sector very strong if we want an inclusive growth and ensure that the population below the poverty line gets minimized over a period of time. Then, it was Raman Bala who was talking about, young demographic advantage, so to say. That's true, because out of 7.1 billion global population, India has 1.25 billion. That means for every 6 persons, one should be an Indian in the world. And out of that, you have substantive youth population. So while American population is a stagnated population, we can say European population, Japanese population, and even Australian population is a declining population. Chinese population is an aging population. It is only India's population which is a young population. And that demographic advantage, if we have to reap, then the youth have to be empowered with right kind of education, knowledge, empowerment, skill sets. If only our youth can be empowered with linguistic skills, communication skills, technological skills, professional skills, managerial skills, that would augur well for the economy to grow at a faster, track and pace. And you must have read, the general feeling is few decades ago the American parents used to tell their children eat well, because millions of Indian children are starving out of poverty without one square meal a day. Today, the same parents are compelled to tell their children at the breakfast table, children study well, otherwise millions of your jobs will be taken away by the Indian children. That paradigm shift is happening. The American parents seem to have understood the strength of the youth of India, whether the youth of India have understood their potential and the scope that is awaiting them is a big question mark. And that is where the role of parents, the role of government and everyone should revolve around, so that this demographic composition should result in a demographic advantage. It should not result into a demographic disaster. Like there was a competition for best couple, 3 couples were shortlisted. And the last round to select the winner was to ask a question for each of the spouse, and based on the appropriateness or the relevancy of the answer, select the best couple. So one of those 3 couples were chartered accountant couple. So first the husband was taken aside and asked, if you are asked to draw up a balance sheet of your life and fit in that balance sheet your wife, where will you fit in your spouse? So he said, undoubtedly on the liability side. As what? Now, before engagement, she was a contingent liability. After engagement, accrued liabilities. After marriage, secured liability. So that was the answer. When the turn came to the wife, she said, undoubtedly on the asset side, I'll fit in my husband. Everybody were happy, and including the husband who felt elated. Then the next question was, as what? She said, miscellaneous expenditure to the extent not written off. Now, these youth, whether they are going to fill up the balance sheet of India on the asset side or on the liability side, that's going to be a big question mark. But I, in my own small way, I keep addressing the youth across the country, because that is one activity I have not discontinued, because that gives enormous amount of passion, and if we can ignite those minds that they can achieve anything and everything, they do miracles. And therefore, so I used to tell them, I don't mind whether you are filling up the India's balance sheet either on asset side or on the liability side, but ensure that if you are on the asset side, be the goodwill of the nation, and if you are on the liability side, be part of the general reserve, so that you can be drawn out to declare dividend to the population. So that is how Now, looking at a comparative statistical analysis, these are obvious. Just to recapitulate, this figures, in 2012, GDP size, India is in 10th position, Australia is in the 12th position. In between you have Canada in the 11th position. And in terms of population, interestingly, if you look at the statistics of the population in India using railway transportation on a daily basis, it matches with the Australian population. 23 million Indians use trains, and so that's how it matches. And proceeding further, in terms of GDP growth, as was rightly mentioned, we had a dip in 2008 when the global financial crisis was slowing down Indian economy, but stimulus packages again revived it. But 2012-13 were the worst, as was mentioned, we went below 5%, and now we are limping back to 5%, but the target is by next 2 years we must hit at 8%. From then on there should not be any looking backwards. So that is the goal and that is the target. And inflation rate, again, it was double digit for quite some time. Now it is sliding down and it is appearing to be nearing a controllable mechanism. And whereas Australia, that is not a worry. In terms of consistency, they are good. And even in terms of FDI, foreign direct investment, because FII is a hot money. It can come anytime, it can go back anytime. They can withdraw other funds, liquidate the assets. But FDI, there is a lock-in period, and it's a direct investment to contribute to the productivity or creation of asset for the country. Therefore, FDI should be a good yardstick to measure as to the growth trajectory awaiting an economy. So therefore, that way India is picking up. Currently, a lot of investment is flowing in. So that is another positive news. Between India and Australia, President Raghu was highlighting So there we have to catch up a lot, because our exports are 1/5 of what we are importing from Australia. So therefore, there a lot of scope is there. I think China is doing far greater trade relationship between Australia, whereas India is lacking behind, and we need to catch up always. This morning, Alex was mentioning that nothing wrong in making mistakes. Very true. So India has made many mistakes. But looking at China, looking at some of the developed economies, I think we'll have to learn. Because, see, mistakes are painful when they occur, but cumulatively they are called experience. But to learn out of one's own experience, it takes longer duration. So if you can learn out of others' experience, I think the wisdom is faster to be derived and implemented. So from that perspective, I think it should be looked at. Now, looking at 5 sectors, if India can focus on 5 sectors, like when Japan was hit very badly in the Second World War in 1945, Hiroshima, Nagasaki was completely devastated and destroyed. They built the economy decade by decade, focusing sector by sector. Be it textiles, steel, automotive, electronics, construction, like that they went sector by sector. So I think India should also plan. But for all that you need infrastructure in place, because infrastructure is one segment which connects with every other segment, without which you cannot gallop as you want to be. So therefore, from that perspective, infrastructure, we are lagging behind as compared to China, and that's where there's a lot of investment need to take place, and we must ensure, and that is why the highest allocation in the budget presented on 10th of July was towards infrastructure. This took #1 priority for the new government. So therefore, excellent allocation, and we are talking about roads, airports, ports, so on and so forth, everything to be built on a fast track basis. Then looking at the next segment, agriculture. So besides manufacture, these 5 sectors, infrastructure, agriculture, because India emerged as an agrarian society in the past. The contribution of agricultural segment was phenomenal, as high as 40%, but now it has come down to 17%. So huge population depends on the agricultural segment. 58% livelihood is from agriculture, but it contributes only 1/6 of the GDP. So that is the poor state of affairs. So there also, and you will be shocked to know, 30%, not less than 30% of what is produced out of agricultural operations goes unconsumed as a waste, because we don't have 2 things. We don't have transport facilities, we don't have warehousing facilities. So if only, the new government, again it is infrastructure, connected with agriculture. So cold store facilities, warehousing facilities, and excellent transport connectivity across the country for ensuring smooth and adequate even supplies through all seasons. If that is ensured, 30% of what we already produce will meet out the deficit which we are talking about. So therefore, a lot can be done on agriculture, and that is why agriculture also got good amount of allocation, and a lot of plans are there on that front. See, farmers committing suicide, I don't know where else it could happen except in India. See, the borrow loans, the rains do not come, there is no water, there is no electricity, and the crops fail and they are not able to repay. And that's why, if you remember, government came out with waiver of farmers loan, thinking that that will stop suicide. After that also there were few suicides. When they went and asked why he committed suicide, they said he repaid the loan before waiver. That's why he committed suicide. That is the pathetic situation. Actually, that is not the permanent solution. It may be at best a temporary solution. And moving to the next sector, education. Education is one which can change the profile. Again, President Raghu was mentioning as to how the accomplishment, success stories of some of the students from poor and downtrodden families. Definitely that one qualification is going to change the profile of that family, horoscope of that, future of that family. That can be seen. So therefore, across all the entire education sector, if that can be achieved, because our course is such that it is affordable for anybody, any strata of society, and there is no reservation, so therefore anybody could join and do it. But the same is not the case with other courses, higher education and all. That is where the difficulty comes. And again, the Prime Minister was talking about infrastructure in girls' schools, because according to him, which is rightly so, a lot of girl children discontinue education for want of basic facilities in the schools. So therefore he was talking about building toilets as part of corporate social responsibility, and by next Independence Day, 1 year's time, there should not be a single school in India where girls students study without these basic amenities and facilities. That is the roadmap. Actually, when a boy gets educated, you will agree that he gets civilized, he gets empowered. But when a girl child gets educated, I believe that the whole family gets civilized, whole family gets educated, empowered, down the line. So that is the hallmark. And the women confidence can do miracles to a nation's empowerment and growth also. In fact, on one of the evenings when Obama and Michelle Obama took out for a private dinner, they went to a restaurant in Washington, and the Michelle Obama excused her husband to go and greet the owner of the restaurant. And after some time she came back and Obama asked, so you know the owner? So she said, yes, we were same batch in high school and he was my sweetheart. Then Obama was prompted to say, if you had married him, then you would have become the wife of the owner of such a wonderful restaurant. She politely responded saying, no, if I had married him, he would have become the American president. That is the kind of confidence and empowerment you can impress upon the women folks if only they are in the right environment and they are given the right kind of education. So that is should be happening, and a lot of focus is there on education, though I am not impressed with the allocation. And next is health. It so happens that I am in the governing body of Public Health Foundation of India, where we want to do a lot of reforms on the health front. It's a public-private partnership between government and private sector. So a lot of contributions are coming from domestic front and even Bill Gates Foundation, the UN, and so on and so forth. But the kind of things that we need to do in India on health front is mind-boggling. We are low in the health quotient. I was just now posting on the demographic composition saying we have young India, but can I say with the same amount of authority we have healthy India? Absolutely no. The kind of child mortality, malnutrition and unhygienic environment in which the population lives, all these things, you have to see to believe it. And therefore on that front also a lot can be done, and that's why in the budget some allocation has been done, but it is, I think it has to get priority in the next 1 or 2 year budgets. Then moving on to the last sector about which I wanted to highlight is tourism. Look at the statistics of 2011. I wish Indian statistics are updated to the current level, but even looking at that, Dubai as a city has more tourists flocking to the city than India can attract. So, and just 6.2 million foreign tourists visited during that country, whereas if you look at China and the US, it is 10 times greater, and if you look at France, it is 12 times or 13 times. So therefore, and I fail to understand what is there in other countries which is not there in India. You just list it out. You list out, in the next slide, I think I've given the list also. You talk about mountains, you talk about valleys, you talk about forests, you talk about lakes, backwaters, and deserts. All that is there in one country. Monuments, one of the 7 wonders of the world. But the point is, problem is, again, lack of infrastructure to access those spots. How many of the Indians who have seen tourist attractions in different continents have seen the tourist attractions within India itself? I mean, why? Not that we are not inclined, but there is no awareness, there is no infrastructure, the accessibility is not so friendly and easy, and they make it most complicated and difficult. So that's why a lot of plans are there to develop on that front, because if only tourism can develop, I think even our balance of payments position will improve. A lot of forex can be earned, and all allied sectors like hospitality to guides. You know, Egypt alone has got 10,000 guides surviving in that small place. So look at so many tourist attractions across India, and that would augur very well. And see, Sony Max, when it was telecasting the cricket commentary of 2020, that one-day match and all that, usually who will comment? The commentators will be the S12 cricketers, because they only are proficient, they know in and out of cricket to analyze and give data, comparison and all that, predictions. They involved, Mandira Bedi for the first time. She was not a cricket player. She did not know anything about cricket. And maybe they wanted to add glamour to cricket. And so somebody asked, why Mandira Bedi? They say, no, Indian housewives have a lot of spare time. So if a lady who doesn't know much about cricket starts commenting and explaining, it will attract more housewives to watch cricket. But later, the result proved that more men started watching cricket. So, all these things if we do to attract foreign tourists, I am sure more than foreign tourists, domestic tourism will grow. And the culture, we have so much divergent culture, linguistic barrier, all that will vanish and harmony, unity can be built. Actually, why should we be talking about gross domestic product, GDP? We should be talking about gross domestic happiness, GDH. If that grows, if intangibles grow, automatically tangibles will follow. That philosophy should hold good for this. Now, there is a positive side also. Statistics indicate that in future, Asia could become a prominent place where billionaires would emerge. And the growth percentage is 119% in Asia. And whereas in Australia it is 10%. And high net worth individuals also 88% as compared to 35%. The only other three jurisdictions which can compete with Asia seem to be Latin America, North America and Africa. Like Vice President Manoharan was mentioning, for IFRS, pains and pleasures coexist. But in terms of this is a positive news. Maybe this could be the driving force, indicating that a lot of entrepreneurial skills will have the outlet within India, and as Raman was mentioning, China, Japan and India, altogether Asia should be dominating in the future. Now, another parameter by which I am enthused to project the future is this. I picked it up as I was flying down a few days back from Mumbai to Chennai in a magazine, job market, where the recruitments are happening.